Hi, and welcome to Rising of ALKEBULAN. Today I would like to focus to a YouTuber Bisrat4Africa who responded to one of my AI video that I made in the past weeks about him bullying African indigenous spirituality. On his video that he recently posted, he states that he, as Bisrat4Africa, seeks to clarify the modern misconceptions about Christianity.
If you look at our description, you'll see that we seek to clarify modern misconceptions about Christianity. And in clarifying modern misconceptions about Christianity, it's important that also we clarify misconceptions even about African spirituality as well. Because if Christianity is true, it means African spirituality is false, or any other spirituality.
First of all, we don't know that as he claims to clarify Christianity, what gives him the ability to clarify, or what gives him the authority to clarify, as he never stated that he is a scholar of religion, or he is a pastor, or theologian, or even a researcher. As you heard him, he states that it's important for him to also clarify misconceptions about African spirituality. So what gives him the right to clarify any misconceptions about African spirituality, as he subscribes to Christianity and has never ever been under African spirituality? Also, to be fair, he actually doesn't know anything about African indigenous spirituality, but he wants to clarify. Who is he in African spirituality? What gives him the right to demote or to speak about African indigenous spirituality? What is it that he knows about African spirituality? The truth behind Christian religion. This guy from Bisrat4Africa is literally speaking dirty about African spirituality as if Christianity has no wrong. It's always and all about right only, which is totally incorrect. He knows nothing. About spirituality, he only focuses on the dark side of spirituality, only in an agenda of proving that African spirituality does not exist. Let's read a study done by James K. Mashabela that also proves the existence of African indigenous spirituality. Revisiting African Spirituality. A reference to Missiological Institute consultations of 1965 to 1967. The phenomena of African spirituality is central to Africa because sacred, secular, and socio-economic forms are an integral part of a holistic life, health, God and ancestors, community, and holistic healing in Africa. African spirituality is the value, quality, and an unending place for Africans. Thus, this phenomenon is precipitated in ATR and AIC, where it is lived, breathed daily. African spirituality has continuously been visible among Africans who worship God in the mainline churches as well. Therefore, African spirituality has always been given an ongoing raise in Africa from a holistic, all-sacred life and historical perspective. African spirituality was a way of life in Africa before the arrival of all religions in Africa. In Bisrat4Africa video he claims or believes meaning, he's not sure and has no proof that in African spirituality they worship God. He thinks it's all about ancestors only.
Now, this is for me one of the evidences that this is all about humanity and really not about God, because the emphasis is on people and not so much about God. It's not about connecting you to the divine, but it's about connecting you to people.
As you have had him, the study has answered him. In African spirituality, we worship the Creator, God, our ancestors. We don't abandon them, but instead, they play a huge part in our lives, just as they did when they were still alive. They still do when they are no longer living too. We did not fall from the sky, but instead we were born by our parents, therefore we acknowledge them and respect them. We don't worship ancestors in African spirituality as Bisrat4Africa says. We worship the Creator, God, in our African indigenous way. Let's focus a little bit to the truth about Christianity or religion. For many years till date, religion has killed many people. You may say it was all about politics and power, but judging by researches, it clearly shows that religion was behind the killing, genocides, and wars. Religion was forced on Africans. Africans were killed, made slaves, raped in the name of accepting Christian religion. Let's listen to Reverend Walter Mwambazi as he dwells more on this subject.
A number of people within religious institutions aren't really about shepherding, grounding, discipling, and releasing, but more about manipulation, control, and selfish gain. Religion is the number one tool for mind control from the elite for the ordinary. So, let's ask ourselves this question. Exactly how has the ruling class used religion to oppress and suppress? So let's walk you through 5 key ways that I've learned. The first one is that they've used it as a means of control. Okay, so religion has been used throughout history to ensure that the elite can take control of the simple. And they've done this in 3 very specific ways. The first is to push the concept of martyrdom. And what's that? That's basically the idea that you go out there and you do all you can, including dying, if possible, for the purposes of your religious agenda. What's so interesting is that this is done for leaders. But the saddest part, though, is that some people are so fervent about this that they go as far as blowing up people, as we know very well through the antics of Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab. The second method is the suffering model. Okay, pie in the sky, life will be good for you when you get in the kingdom of the hereafter. So suffer, suffer, suffer. The more you suffer, the holier you are. The irony, as always, is that it's the disciples that suffer. The third one is that money is evil. Just as badly misquoted, the love of money is the root of all evil. Ladies and gentlemen, those 2 statements have done more harm towards wealth creation and the concept of wealth in Africa. Global Finance Magazine 2020 figures. Of the 20th poorest countries in the world, 16 are in Africa. 16. I mean, just think about that. Ask any African. We pray the most. We fast the most. We're the most fervent religious people I know. And yet, all the poverty. So does that mean prayer doesn't work? Of course it does. All I need to do is just point you to countries that are religious but very rich. The USA, Israel, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain. So if there are countries that are rich, yet there are people that are poor like us, something is wrong. You see, there is no greater person that can justify political control than a religious person. And so, throughout history, religion has justified the elite. They call them the noble. They call them the blue blood. And if you bring it close to home, they're called the anointed. Third is slavery. And it's one of the darkest chapters in the history of mankind. I mean, for a period, a group of people came, forced religious Christianity on another group, and then captured and enslaved them, shipped them across the Atlantic as slaves. And to justify all this, they say the Bible justifies this. Slaves. In fact, black people are inferior and white people are superior. And here's the big deal. This whole entire scene of slavery set the tone for the 4th factor, colonialism. I'll be honest with every one of us here. Colonialism was the back end of Christianity. See, when the missionaries were sent over, those that sent the missionaries had an agenda. They called it the 3 C's. Civilize, Christianize, commercialize. So, they came over. But here's something very interesting. As they began to do their work, they brought a very powerful meme. An image of a white Jesus. Blonde hair, blue eyes. Man, guy looked just like the missionaries. I mean, and I'll be honest with you, it was powerful, it worked. To make matters worse, they took our names and said, these are pagan, demonic names. You better get Christian names. What's interesting, you all know, is that the Christian names were nothing but English names or French names or Portuguese names. They were really not Christian. As if that wasn't enough, ethnic groups. They divided us by the color of our skin. At the top of the food chain were the whites, and then followed the Indians, and then followed the coloreds, and right at the bottom were the blacks. But you see, the worst was yet to come, which is my fifth point: white supremacy. You know, what is sad is that white supremacy it had its greatest advocate in religious Christianity. It was religious Christianity that pushed the concept and idea that whites are actually supreme and superior to blacks.